Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Bull City Coordinators Duke football, and in this case, basketball coverage podcast. Check us out on our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. You can find us on all the socials at Duke FB Coverage. And make sure to check out the Classical Antiquity Side Quest podcast, in which we cover topics from ancient Greece and ancient Rome. We're getting that off the ground. It's very exciting. And we have a new episode coming out soon that I think you'll enjoy. Actually, a series, and there may be a crossover episode. But today, we're not talking about that. Today, what we're talking about is a recap of last season's basketball team, how they did under year 2 of Coach Shire. We're going to talk about the recruiting, the portal, and what to expect from 2024 through 2025 Duke Blue Devil basketball. And we are going to do that with one of my favorite guests, my good friend who has been kind enough to return to the podcast for his 3rd time. And you know this guy, you know him very well because he played basketball at Duke. He played basketball there for 4 years. He went to several Final Fours, and he has been a guest on this podcast twice before. It is our good friend, former Duke player, we're number 21, which you guys know I have a fondness for that jersey number. It's been a very, very important part of the Duke Blue Devil rotation. Look at how many great players and key contributors to great teams have worn that number. Our next guest is none other than Robert Brickey. Robert Brickey, how are you, sir?
I am doing well, young man, and thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for calling me young. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. That's each day as I see more gray in my beard and less hair on the top of my head, I appreciate comments like that.
Listen, just call it wisdom. You're operating in the phase of wisdom right now.
Well, I don't know if my kids agree with you, but I will
They don't. They
definitely.
don't have to. They don't have to.
Actually, before we get into this, I'll tell you this story. You'll appreciate it. I was thinking about you a little bit over the weekend. My son's lacrosse team, he's in the 9th grade, and they don't really have a JV team, so they're all on the varsity team, which is good.
Mhm.
So they made a run. They got better as the season went on, which is something we'll talk about this evening, I'm sure, with the Blue Devils basketball team. But they got better as the season went on, and they got to the state championship game. They had won last year, and they had like a kid who went and played D1 somewhere, I think, and they won. So it was surprised they had a chance to repeat. But I was walking around the track at the home team's field. They played in Suffolk, so they had to travel a bit. It was like 4.5 hours down there. Great field, but I'm walking around the track at halftime just to stretch my legs. You know, we've been in the car all day. And I noticed, I want to get your take on this. I noticed his team, they were all kind of had their heads down. Nobody was talking much but the coach. And I just kind of got a feeling that this close game at halftime was not going to end well. You've been in those situations, so what would you be thinking at that point in time?
Man, the same thing. Have you watched any of the NBA playoffs?
Not much. No,
Okay.
no.
There's been some tremendous energy expended on the defensive end, and when you exude that kind of energy, you can't contain it to the floor. When you get off the floor, you're gonna talk to your teammates and your coaches and, hey, we need to do this. That energy should still translate, even if it's halftime, going in the locker room, coming back out, warm ups. I should still see and feel that same energy. So for it not to be there, I think you had just cause for thinking that.
Well, I didn't say anything when I looped back around to our parents' side, but
Right.
after Suffolk scored their first goal, I grabbed my wife because she played a bunch of soccer all through high school. I grabbed her and I said, "We can go." She said, what do you mean?" I said, "Look, you didn't go over there." And
Right.
I told her what I told you, and she just got this look on her face. And I said, "We're going to lose this game."
Right.
And she said, "Well," I said, "they're going to lose this game." I try not to say we because, I personally, I don't like it when parents say that because you're not on the team, and it
Right.
needs to be about your kids. And so we both kind of just watched it unfold, and then they made a little run late, but it was too late and there just wasn't enough time. But it was they had a great season to get that far. I think they overperformed, but it was hard for them, and it was hard for my son coming back. But I told him, I said, "Look, son, I'm proud of you, man. I mean, you stole a few minutes here and there on a varsity team, and you guys, even though you finished second, you still had a great season. So don't
Right,
you put in all the work, don't be disappointed about it."
right.
But speaking of people who maybe didn't finish the season the way they wanted to, but still had, I think, a pretty good one, give us your thoughts about how this last Blue Devils team did. Because unlike last season, when I was supposed to, I reached out to you this time to get you back on.
Right.
So give me your thoughts, big picture. What did you think about this season?
I thought the coaching staff did a really good job. I thought they had some real challenges through the year with injuries. Caleb Foster was a big loss because I know not that I've talked to him, but I would imagine in their planning, he was a big part of what they were going to do. And then you lose him, and then had some other injuries throughout the year, and so then your bench is short all of a sudden, and now you got to play guys you're not used to play. But so for all that to have happened, and that's not magical. That happens to every team. But to manage it the right way means they did a good job as a coaching staff. So I mean, they had a fantastic season. And considering they got to the end of the year, they were only playing 6 or 7 guys, and that's hard. That's really hard. So, great, Shire. Matter of fact, when I saw him last year, my first question was, "Has it begun to slow down for you yet?" Because your first year, and maybe even your second year, things are moving a million miles an hour. I mean, it's like ping pong balls. It's all kind of stuff going on, and you got to process it, and then everybody's looking at you now. So all eyes on you for answers and direction, as opposed to you're the guy sitting next to the guy. So I think it's begun to slow down for him a little bit, and he's managed to continue to do a fantastic job of recruiting. So I think built on 2 years ago, had a good year last year. I think they have even better personnel coming in, so I'm expecting bigger things this year.
One of the things that I want to follow up on that I agree with you 100% on was how Shire managed the rotation and the bench with it seemed like everybody was hurt. I mean, this is
Right.
something that the football fans relate to is the
Right.
injuries,
Yeah.
right? And I thought one thing that bodes well for Shire is in these 2 seasons, he's won an ACC championship and he's been to the Elite Eight.
Mhm.
And he did it this year with never really having a roster that maybe was the way you would want it to be. And we can
Right.
talk a little bit more about that later on. But I thought he was very creative with the bench and he was willing to try to find things that worked and not just be rigid and inflexible. Was that your take as well? Did you notice things like that?
Absolutely. Now, the tricky part about injuries is in some ways they can work to your advantage because now you got to develop guys that typically weren't going to get those minutes, which could help you down the stretch of the season into the ACC tournament and into the NCAA tournament. Now it could go the other way too, where you're so devastated, and man, it's like you're looking down the bench, and you may get to the point where it's hard to practice because you're scared somebody's going to turn an ankle in practice, and now you're down another guy. So to have all of that happening at the same time in your second year as head coach, following a legend, uh, that's a lot to process, evaluate, and then be able to pull it all together to execute to the point where we win 28 games. I mean, that's significant. So again, kudos to Shire and his staff.
Yeah, and I the way they squeaked that win out against Houston, I thought was really impressive. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. And this is not, I want to qualify this because I'm not trying to be critical of anybody on the roster. But after watching the first couple of games of the season, my thought on the team was they've got a lot of pieces, but they've got too many guards and they don't have enough bigs.
Right.
And I thought they had too many guys who could play the 1 and the 2, but not enough guys who could play the 4 and the 5. And I thought that
Right.
that hurt them as the season went on. What were your thoughts about the way the roster shook out and it ended up being constructed? Did you think that there were where if anywhere did you think there might have been some deficiencies?
I thought we needed some long athletic wings and maybe not a five, but maybe two versatile fours. Defender, they don't have to be scorers, defenders and rebounders. But big enough body in case we need to guard somebody, small enough body in case we need to switch. So yeah, you're right. I think the we needed more length, more height, and a little more toughness.
And I think what you said, I'm trying to remember maybe the last time Duke had one of those just killer 6'6" guys, 6'6",
Right.
6'7" guys who could play the 3, be a 4 in a desperation situation,
Right.
guard a 2. I feel like we've maybe got some transfers like that coming in this year.
Yeah.
But I think it was hard kind of as you watched Filipowski play out of position. I thought he did everything he could at the 5, but it was just really hard for him. And when you were at Duke, you had a lot of talented guys at the 4 and the 5. Can you talk about kind of what, if you want to be on a good team, if you want to be a good team, and you know something about that at Duke, okay?
Right.
Talk about what you need from the 4 and the 5 position to succeed.
Well, I've watched the Minnesota Timberwolves play a lot this year, and they got a big lineup when Gobert starts out. But when they go small, I think they're better. They put Big Cat at the 5. He's versatile enough to guard wings, and you can do a lot of switching. And when I was in school, we had enough guys that were big enough. We had size where we had a front line we could defend, but we weren't so big and so slow that we couldn't switch in an emergency situation. So, and that's the game has evolved that way now because they spread the floor so much now. They shoot threes from deep, so the floor there's more space to have to guard. And if you got big slow guys, that puts you at a disadvantage. But if you've got some 4s and 5s, Christian Layton and Danny Ferry, those guys, although they're not wings, they could in a short situation they could serve as a wing. So yeah, it helps because it makes your team more versatile, and you can mix and match your lineups a little better when you have that versatility.
And if you can get a guy like a Lively or a Williams who can control the paint,
Right.
be that 5, be the rim protector, your team can be really, really effective. And I felt like, not to criticize Filipowski, I thought he did as well as he could do playing out of position. I thought that's really what the team needed. They needed another guy who could be
Right.
that set
Yep.
5. And you've seen how Lively's played this season, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and to follow on your point about finding guys who can switch and rotate around, it seems like Shire this year, and we can talk a little bit more about the portal later, but it seems like this year he's made an emphasis of getting those guys. What are your thoughts on the folks who are coming in through the portal and maybe what we might get to see this coming season?
Man, I think they've done a very good job. I know some of the guys they're bringing in, and I think we've improved a little bit on size, athleticism, 3-point shooting, and toughness. And so, and then you figure we could probably play 8 or 9 deep. And so, everybody's gonna have an injury here or there. So if you could play 7 strong all year, you got a chance to have a really good year. And if you stay healthy, you can play 9 or 10. And I'm loving the fact that we've got some older bodies coming in because an 18-year-old body doesn't look like a 21-year-old body, and the experience, the weight room, the travel, the battles that they faced in their conferences, wherever they come from, et cetera, all goes into play. And so you're adding not just a player, you're adding experience, strength, toughness, older guy with some experience. So you're bringing a lot to a team in a body. And I think we've got 4 transfers coming in this year. So I'm really excited to see what they look like when they get on the floor.
There are 2 things I wanted to follow up with you about, and I'm going to start in reverse order, but I want to get into the ages of the guys. So I think it was the guy from Oakland, maybe, who was hitting all those shots during the tournament and looked like he was almost 30, right?
Mhm. Right.
And I was texting with a buddy of mine, and I just said, "Did we look like that when we were in college? Because I don't think so."
Right.
And you went through this, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about it later with how maybe we as fans have to look at, are we going to have developmental players at Duke any longer? But talk about that developmental transition from going from high school to college and then college year 1 to college year 4, just how your body changes.
Oh man, listen, I think we're in an age where the elites will be good, the blue bloods will be good, but we're going to see mid-major programs consistently in the Final Four because they're going to have 5, and 6 year guys. They're going to be 15 to 25 pounds heavier weight room. They're going to know their system. They would have been with their coach for 4 or 5 years. It's a whole different unit when you go to and you've been together for a while. You've been through some bad. You may have had a losing record your freshman year, but you fought through and you got better and you got tougher and you grew. And so all of a sudden, by the time you're seniors and fifth year guys, you look like men. And when you're 18, it's rare that you look like a man. Most kids like high school kids. We talk thin, long, and athletic. But when you start playing against teams like Tennessee, very physical, bigger, more athletic teams, Alabama, fast and physical. You got to be able to match those energies. And so to put 18-year-old guys out against, oh, is that me? Sorry, I had a computer thing going there. To put 18-year-old bodies against 22-year-old bodies, I will put my money on the 22-year-old body every time.
Well, I was texting early in the season with Joe Giglio, who we all know does the OG podcast. And I was telling him about Duke and I got to say, the Blue Devils went much further this year than I thought they were. I had kind of slotted us after watching them for a little bit to go out in the second round like they did the year before, in large part because my thought was we're going to run into an older team.
Yeah.
And it's going to come back to bite us. And we saw that losing twice to NC State, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those guys, I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from what Keats did, but he had an older group of guys there.
Right.
And I think you're 100% correct. If you're going to bet on the talent and the possibility of what these guys could be versus guys who've been in a program for 3+ years, I'm with you. I'm going to bet on the experienced team because we've seen so many Blue Devils teams check out early against older, experienced guys. But one thing you talked about, matching the energy, and we mentioned that a little bit with my son's lacrosse team. But is that something that comes with time, with defining roles, who the leader is going to be, where you guys end up looking to? I mean, where does that come from? Because it can't just come from the coach.
You're right. Yeah. And there's a lot of factors that come into play. Again, we talked about getting stronger, getting the weight room, maturing as a player. Listen, you sat in a bunch of film sessions by the time you were a junior, and they pointed out things about your game. They've gotten you into individual workouts to work on those things. So, I mean, and then there's some maturity that comes along with it. Are you mature enough to handle your role as a leader, a scorer, et cetera, et cetera? So it's not just your ability to play. There are a lot of factors that go into selecting the guys that are going to be your leaders. They're going to help you win. They're going to help you be great in the locker room, going to be great on the bus and in the airport and in the hotel. So you got to have not just good basketball players. You got to have quality people who can play basketball.
Now, one of the things that we've talked about is the toughness, and we want to see this team be tougher next year. And I'm thinking about Shire was always a tough guy when he played, right? When it was against Carolina, he would find a way to hit big shots. If he needed to play the point guard like he did in 2010,
right.
he did it. But one of the toughest guys that I remember ever seeing come through there is an assistant coach in Chris Carrawell. I
Mhm.
mean, he could play any position on the floor.
Right.
He matched up against Tim Duncan. People forget about that, but he did. I mean, what I'd like to get your thoughts on is putting yourself in the mindset of a guy like Chris Carrawell. I imagine that would have to be hard for him when his team is getting its toughness questioned constantly.
Right. Right.
And just what do you think might have been going through their minds as they were hearing that and how they might have tried to address those things?
Well, the tough part is the game has changed, and kids don't play as tough. The situations that they play in aren't as tough as it used to be. Everybody plays inside on the court now. We were coming along, you played where there was a hoop, which means on dirt, on gravel, on blacktop with rocks. So you had to adjust to the situation that you're in. But it, I remember when I was in ninth grade, eighth grade, my brothers took me. I had two older brothers. They took me to Fort Bragg. They said, if you want to be any good, you got to play against guys that are tougher than you. I'm in eighth grade. And he took me out there to play with soldiers. I got my tail kicked. Oh my God. And listen, I did not enjoy basketball for a while. I was like, this is not fun. I'm getting beat up every weekend. This is not fun. But then I started playing against guys my own age, and it got a lot easier. So, I grew up playing in a tough situation, and it helped me. Guys are playing indoor ball with referees and AAU and travel ball all the time now. So there's never a chance for them to get tougher because they're playing against each other all the time.
Yeah, I wonder about that and and how hard it has to be to develop that culture when players come and go so much. And
Yeah.
I don't think that movement of players is a bad thing. I think they should have the right, like any other college student, to
Right.
decide where they want to go. But I do wonder if it is going to be counterproductive for some of their development. And there's a couple of guys, for example, who left this year who I think had they stayed and gotten to juniors, they would have been major contributors. You've coached a lot of ball. Talk to us a little bit about, from your perspective, the challenges that a place like Duke faces now, not only with one and dones, but now also dealing with the portal element too. And guys saying, well, look, if you're not going to start me, I'm just going to leave and go somewhere
Right.
else.
Yeah, yeah. Man, it's the Wild West. And, and I would imagine it's part of the reason that it was Villanova's coach, Jay Wright, Roy Williams, probably Coach K probably had something to do with it. So the old school guys are leaving because they don't want to deal with all this, man. I mean, so it's already bad enough when you're recruiting, but now you can just leave and you don't have to tell your coach. Your coach might. I spent 8 months recruiting you. Get you on campus. We have a good year because you feel like, or somebody in your corner or in your ear tells you you're not getting enough touches. We can get those. We can get more touches over at another school. So man, just to have to deal with that NIL money, man. So it's. I thought recruiting was hard enough before these periods, but man, so think about how the playing field has changed in the last few years with those two new rules. And like you say, it doesn't lend to guys sticking around because they want to play right away, which I don't have a problem with it. If you want to go play, go play. But if you're not playing here, where are you going to play? Does that mean you got to drop down to another level? Well, maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe that's not a bad thing. But you got to get some minutes and some development somewhere. So if you leave here, is the next place going to develop you like we would have? So and it makes it harder for the fans. Like it's hard to keep up with rosters now because man, there's so much turnover. I think we lost 10 guys from last year's roster. 10. So that's a lot to keep up with.
And I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this that's not sounding as terrible as it's going to sound. But to your point about if you're not playing at Duke, TJ Power goes to UVA and Bennett is a heck of a coach. And one thing he's going to require of you is playing really, really good defense.
Right.
The issue with Power was he was perceived as a defensive liability at times. I'm just saying, I don't see an immediate upside to him
Right.
going to a place like UVA. Now, that's his call, right? I mean, he should be
Right.
free to make that decision if he wants to make that decision. But to your point, there might be some benefit to him staying and developing at Duke and playing along the guys he's going to play along.
Right.
And maybe he redshirts next year, right?
Right. Right.
But that one, I didn't think we'd keep him and Stewart. Losing both of them was a real head scratcher. And frankly, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I don't like commenting on individual players too much because it always seems like you're being negative, and I'm not trying to be negative about them. But I thought Stewart had an opportunity next season to play in the rotation and get some good minutes.
Right.
That one shocked me. I wonder if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it really surprised me too, because I saw some flashes this year. I said, man, I tell you what, when he gets some minutes and some experience, and he gets a little bit more confidence in himself, he's going to be a good contributor next year. And I thought maybe his junior senior year, he had a chance to really step his game up because he's got a great body and he's a great athlete. So he's already got two of the attributes that the pros are looking for. If you just develop your game, now you got a chance to be a pro. And then the other side, like we were talking about before, you go to UVA, they score 52 points a game. It's hard for a scout to get excited about somebody who's averaging 9 points. But at UVA, that may be what happened. And I love the coach. I love this system. I love what they do. But it's hard to become a pro out of that style of play.
Yeah, and there's a lot we don't know, but you wonder, as a parent with a kid who plays not at the level that these guys play, but who does play high school sports, I'm always just trying to take a step back and just be there if he has questions.
Right.
Because you see a lot of parents who get overly involved and way too invested. And that can be a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing. And I don't want to come across as someone who's saying they shouldn't be able to transfer. But what I am trying to say is that taking the time and putting in the work and giving it a little bit of time to see if you can make something of it, it may take longer than a year, right? Like they may go to UVA or Ohio State or wherever they go to, and it may take them a year or two to get ready. Well, they could have done that at Duke and had a better chance of going somewhere. And notice we haven't been critical or said anything about Jeremy Roach at all because this was year 5. I mean, he's done pretty much everything he can do as a Blue Devil. Yeah. I don't think he's going to get much more out of staying another year.
I agree. And, and if he wants to be a pro, I love the kid, but this should have been your year. This should have been your year to wow the scouts to the point where, because they were looking at you. There was a lot. He was out some of this year too, but there were a lot of games you had an opportunity to be the guy because they were looking for the guy, and you're a senior with the experience. So, is playing another year really going to help him? I don't know. I just don't see it.
Well, I think his size is going to work against him in the NBA. But I also think, to your point about it felt like there was never a single guy who was the man, who was the guy.
Right.
And it just seemed like they could gut out and be gritty and tough to win games, but they never really got that offensive identity that they needed. And I don't know why that was. It just never came together. But hopefully, one of the good things about NIL is players can get paid for all the work that they do. Mm-hmm. So hopefully Roach will have a good a good year and make a lot of money. It's going to be hard. I don't know if I can root for Baylor, but we'll see about that.
Right.
But one of the things, though, and I have this conversation when people come on, is the NIL element of it. And there's a lot of going on with conference restructuring, as I call it, and you're seeing these schools sue to leave the ACC, which is a whole other discussion.
Right.
But it really seems like there's a very simple solution to this situation, and it's just to let the schools employ the players.
Hmm.
And it seems like if you make set rules about this is how much the most you can pay them, they can't get NIL deals through boosters, but they can do it, independently and all this other stuff. Then, you can have contracts to try to keep some of these guys at the school longer, and maybe they'll want to stay longer, right? I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but it seems to me like it's much simpler maybe than the NCAA's member schools are making it.
I agree. I think the NCAA college athletics will not be the same in 5 years. I think somebody's going to come in, a billionaire is going to come in and get another couple of billionaires together. They're going to pay all the top football programs in the country. They're going to form some kind of national league, like a minor league to the NFL, and they're going to get all the TV rights, and it's going to leave everybody else out to dry because football drives the train in terms of revenue. So I think it's really going to change, and I don't know where it's going, and I'm not all that excited about it because the way we grew up observing and watching ACC basketball or ACC sports will not be the same. Like it's hard. It's not the same now because man, just like every game I have to start. Who's on our roster again? And where did that guy come from? And who left? And it's as a fan, I'm not that I'm not that into it. So I need it to stay the same for a little while so I could catch up.
It it is hard as a fan, and I hate to be that old guy talking about how things used to be.
Right.
But man, I'll tell you, back when you were playing ball, back when you were growing up, back when I was growing up, there was no tournament like the ACC tournament, man. That tournament was amazing. And that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it was something else. And the Big East has it. I mean, they've got it. Their basketball tournament, they have it. And I wish that we did. We've just got, we've got way too many teams. It's an afterthought now. But I am interested on your thoughts about how everything is going to change. And I'd kind of be curious of your thoughts about this. You're very close with the Duke program, with football driving the bus for college or conference restructuring. The school's not in a great spot because it doesn't have the TV draw, it doesn't have the TV ratings for football. I mean, what is your worst case scenario for what could happen to the Blue Devils? I mean, do you think maybe that because the basketball program's so unique, that could throw us a lifeline?
I think football is going to go up and do their own thing. Somebody's going to do the same thing in basketball, and that may be the saving grace. But yeah, I think college athletics is. I think it's going to take a hit too because I bet you somebody develops a. They already tried to do it with the G League and what was that other league they had that you could come right out of high school and play. Was it Ignite?
Yeah.
Ignite. So somebody's going to do that and do it well. And so all the talent in high school is going to go to that league. And then that's going to leave colleges out. And then so how colleges are going to continue to draw the same amount of fans when they can't draw the talent. So I just think I don't know if that's going to happen, but I just think there's going to be some major changes. And I don't like what I feel might happen down the road.
Right. And one of the things I don't like about the way that NIL is playing out is it feels like it's a tax on fans.
Mm-hmm.
as if we're being the ones who are asked to give money and give all this stuff. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, I don't think it's right for us to be buying access to these players. I mean,
Right.
they have enough to do. I mean, it should be made simpler for them. They shouldn't have to have these additional media appearances and things that they've got to do to satisfy the boosters and donors and all that.
Right.
It's something that I've struggled with, but I don't know. To turn away from a potentially sour note, which is the future of the ACC, and if it gets left up to courts having to determine it, that could be a problem for reasons that should be obvious, because courts can't really deal with long-term issues. They just kind of deal with what's in front of them.
Right.
But next season for basketball could be a really good one, right? I mean, let's talk about kind of what you're looking forward to and maybe what we should expect from some of the guys we've got coming in, because word on the street is that Cooper Flagg kid is pretty good.
And I tell you, I've seen highlights, and I usually don't like it to hype a high school guy because usually playing against high school competition. Uh, but he looks to be in Coach K's vocabulary special. I mean, he is a gifted kid, a good size, can shoot the ball, put it on the floors, athletic, and he's got a very high basketball IQ. So I'm looking forward to watching him play. And I can't remember the big guy we got coming, the African kid we got coming in. I
Right.
can't remember his name, but I'm looking forward to him. And you know what? Really, we got to get to know a whole new roster other than Caleb Foster and what was the point guard's name? Australia kid,
Proctor.
Proctor. I mean, other than that, we got to get to know the entire roster. So I will be in Durham next week, as a matter of fact. Coach K is having his annual fantasy camp. And my hope is a lot of those guys will be there and they'll play pickup so I can at least lay my eyes on them prior to the season starting.
Yeah, and looking at that roster, to your point, the size is there, but you got Malik Brown coming in from Syracuse.
Yeah.
He's got some talent. A lot of these guys' names I'm gonna mispronounce. Knuppel, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but then you got was it Mason Gillis coming in from Purdue? Very physical, very tough, hard-nosed player. Sion James from Tulane coming in. And then there's a lot of size. I mean, there's a lot of size, but it looks like versatile size, to your point
Right.
earlier. I'm still a little bit, I love, the Ewings and the Mutombos and those traditional bigs. I always loved those guys
Right.
growing up, but I know that's long gone. I think Shire, one of the things we've seen from Shire is his teams get better as the season goes on,
Mhm.
and he's very good at getting workable lineups. So, I mean, I think he could, a little bit of a mad scientist type vibe going on. I mean, he could have a
Right.
lot of fun with this roster,
Yeah,
don't you think?
absolutely. Absolutely. And listen, when you're a coach, he at his position right now, man, I bet you he's got his dry erase board out. He is thinking of ways to put combinations together and things he wants to do on offense, things he wants to do on defense, because he's got the personnel to be able to pull it off now. And so he's been able to expand his belief in what could happen next year because he's got a loaded. Well, I don't call it loaded. He's got a very good deep roster, and if they stay healthy, I think they really have a chance to make a deep run next year.
And he's got a lot of credibility after the
Yeah,
last two seasons. I mean, those older guys are going to come in and they're going to listen to him because he's going to be able to say, yeah, I won an ACC
right.
championship my first year. We went to the Elite Eight last year. And that's got to count for something, right? I mean, you've been around a lot of coaches, the guys who've done it. And I mean, you played for the greatest.
Right.
Uh, and I'm sure you played for some guys who didn't have that level of credibility. That's got to make a difference, right?
Oh yeah. Listen, when your coach looks you in the eye, there's got to be a belief in that look, and that player's got to respect it and respond. And so I think Shire's gotten to that point because first of all, it's the one job you don't want to take is the job after the legend. That's the job you don't want to take. But he had big shoes to fill, and he's managed it well for a guy with no experience. Well, no head coaching experience. So you again, it's slowing down for him. He's able to process more. He's able to create more because he's got personnel. This could be a fun year.
And I shouldn't throw shade at a team that beat us twice last year, but as far as consistency, comparing him to Hubert, because he and Hubert came in at about the same time,
Right.
Shire has been in 2 seasons more consistent than Hubert was, which is not criticizing Hubert. It's different
Right.
schools, different programs. But if you're a Duke fan, you've got to feel pretty confident that you've got the right guy
Right.
to go out and do well, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's got 50 plus wins in 2 years. I mean, you win an ACC title, you go deep in the tournament one year. So yeah, he is on track. Now everybody wants to win title every year. that's that's bad. That's bad way to try to figure out what's supposed to happen. But he is developing the program, and the program looks to be in good hands.
Well, and to your point, you're not going to win a title every year. Okay.
Right.
My not to, I'm obviously proud of my son's team, and there's a reason for it for his lacrosse team. There's 3 ninth graders who in his class who are key contributors to the team, right?
Right.
And there are years where maybe you don't go as far as you want, but you see something in what the coach is doing or what the next
Mhm.
group of leaders are doing coming up, and you say, give them a year, give them 2 years. Or I think in this era of basketball, we counterintuitively need to be more patient. But you know, no team is you're not gonna win a championship every year. It's just not possible. And you shouldn't view seasons where you don't win a championship as a wasted season. I mean, if that were the case, how many seasons would Coach K have wasted? Right. That's just
Right.
an absurd thought process. So I agree with you. I mean, I think we need to be patient. We need to enjoy what we saw last year, which was Shire taking a team that I don't think should have gone to the Elite Eight and got them there.
Right.
Right. And the year before that, maybe they shouldn't have won the ACC tournament because they were so young, but he found a way to do it.
Right.
Sure, they got bounced by Tennessee, but are you going to say it wasn't a good year? I mean, come on, that's just absurd. That's absurd.
Tennessee was an older, more experienced, and very, very, very tough team. I mean, it was war, and we had young guys going to war. You don't want to send young guys to war, so yeah, that even though that left a bad taste in our mouths, I'm not upset about it. Tennessee was a very good team. They had a bunch of fifth year guys and seniors. We were freshmen and sophomores. They were 22 and 225, and we were 18 and 175. So, it's only so much we could expect.
Yeah, and I do think if Mitchell had not gotten hurt, that game may have gone different. But the way the refs let the game get played,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't mean they let him they let him go that year. That was for sure.
yeah. And I've not seen many times where the officials have allowed it to get that physical in a college game.
To steal to make another reference to Joe Giglio, he made this point at some point earlier in the year where in the first year that Shire was the head coach, he felt that the refs maybe were working out all their frustrations for having to get pointers made by Coach K constantly. Little suggestions,
Right, right.
comments, running commentary, just constructive criticism, the usual thing. But I think though that may have had something to do with it. They're like, okay, K's not
Right,
here. You're not K. We're not gonna give you what we would give K.
right, right.
But well, Robert, again, you come on this your third time on the program. I appreciate you taking the time. I always learn something when you come on here. So you answer a lot of my questions. I want to give you a chance to have an open mic, open floor. You ask me questions, whatever you want. You talk about whatever you want because you've been so generous with your time and
Oh
doing
man,
this. And this has been
listen,
a lot of fun for me.
this is fun, and I enjoy doing it. So, uh, I get a chance to really. I don't talk Duke basketball very often. I don't talk basketball very often because I see things differently, and I don't see it as a fan. I see it as I'm an evaluator of the game. I'm always trying to figure out what they're trying to do to win. Both teams are trying to do to win. Are they being successful at what they're trying to do? Have they made adjustments? So I'm always thinking about those kinds. And not, I'm not. There's times I don't even know what the score is because I'm focused on. Okay, they're trying. I see what they're trying to do here. They're not doing a very good job of executing it, like in NBA playoffs. Minnesota Timberwolves, their defense has been spectacular. Now you don't say that about NBA basketball very often, but their defense has been spectacular. And I can see what the coach is trying to do, and they're doing a fantastic job of executing it. So that's what I like. I like to see the message get across and the players buy in. And then they're good enough and bought in enough to be able to execute it. So anyway, so I have fun talking in basketball. It keeps me on my toes too, because I get busy and I don't get to many games anymore. Just because I don't want to drive. I got to drive to Durham, and you got to fight traffic when you go to Durham, man. And I don't know when to do that all the time, but I'm good, man. I thank you for the time. I'm good on questions. I have been in training. I switched over from LPL to Prudential, and I have had 16 hours of training in the last 3 days. So I've been sitting looking at a computer like this 6 hours a day for 3 days. So I am good, and I don't have any questions. And if you've got enough for me, I'm going to turn on the TV and watch the basketball game.
Robert, thanks for a lot for coming on. I really appreciate it. We'll have to do it again at some point when basketball gets going next season. Again, you're always a great guest, and it's great to have you on and to stay in touch like we have been doing. And folks, you know where to find us, bullcitycoordinators.com. Check out our new Classical Antiquity Side Quest, the Classical Antiquity Side Quest podcast. You know where to find us. We're on all the socials. We are anywhere you get your podcasts. So give us a listen, and we're doing a lot more on YouTube lately, so check us out there. And hey, guys, as always, go Duke.